You just made a blood libel against the Jewish state. The answer is Piers, it's my turn.
Piers, Rabbi Shmuley.
It is not a blood libel to talk about the amount of death and the tons of explosives that have been dropped on the civilians in Palestine.
On Piers Morgan's show, sparks flew as Candace Owens clashed with Rabbi Shmuley in a heated exchange over Israel and Gaza. Owens blasted what she described as radical Zionism, condemning the Israeli government's role in the civilian death toll, particularly the killing of children. She pushed back hard against Rabbi Shmuley's comparisons to past wartime atrocities, accusing him of justifying the unjustifiable. Facing accusations of anti-Semitism, Owens drew a clear line. Her criticism was of government policy, not the Jewish people. The fiery back and forth highlighted Owens' wider stance against religious extremism of any kind, while Morgan struggled to keep the confrontation under control.
People across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said. There are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. You have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believe that he was the Messiah. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering, what is going on in Israel? What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Candace Owens has actually now said that the Nazis were the good guys and it was the allies, the British, people like yourself, Piers, who engaged in the ethnic cleansing of 12 million people.
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Rabbi Shmuley. If you're just going to continue every time I ask you a question about the war, which is the point of the debate, to just launch into Candace or her family or whatever, that's your decision. But in the interest of fairness, every time you speak for 3-4 minutes, hang on. I'm now going to let Candace respond if you want to, Candace.
Post-October 7th, the world, and especially I would say Zionists in media, were demanding that we all pay attention. And when we began to pay attention, we didn't like what we saw. You cannot tell me to ever feel comfortable with 18,000 children being ruthlessly murdered. You can't get me to feel comfortable as a Christian with the amount of more explosives dropped, tons of explosives dropped on Gaza than were dropped in Hiroshima. This doesn't make sense to me. Gaza is 30 miles long, 7 miles wide. It's incredibly dense population. And this is, by the way, according to Haaretz, that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I believe they're getting those numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley. The fact that you would try to say, I am Jewish and this is what I believe, and do and say the things that you are doing. People can see and hear evil. And what you are doing right now is an act of evil. The lies that you are telling, not just on me, but also on my family members, are a good example for the world to see what we are referring to when we call something radical Zionism.
Candace Owens accuses Rabbi Shmuley of promoting radical Zionism, framing his defense of Israel's military campaign in Gaza as an extremist stance. Owens zeroes in on the moral consequences of the bombardment, particularly the deaths of Palestinian children. When Rabbi Shmuley compares Israel's actions to the Allied bombing of Dresden in World War II, Owens pushes back, arguing that citing past atrocities cannot excuse the present loss of innocent lives. The exchange lays bare the ethical tension between national defense and the humanitarian costs of military operations, especially when large numbers of civilians, including children, are killed. Owens drives home her demand for accountability and moral clarity, insisting that even in the most complex geopolitical conflicts, the value of innocent lives must remain at the center of the conversation.
Debate, I expected that.
It's not a 2 against 1 debate.
And I will, excuse me, no, it's a 2 against 1 debate.
You've made no attempt to answer my question.
No. Now let's look at Israel's justified defense. The United States and Afghanistan had a 4-to-1 ratio of civilians murdered for every one combatant. In the Korean War, it was 5-to-1. In Iraq, it was at least 2-to-1. Israel has the lowest per capita ratio of combatants to civilians.
But you should
As far
also,
as
okay,
Candace
hang on. You should also acknowledge then that there is a unique demographic in Gaza where of the 2 million people who live there, half of them are under 18. So that's a very different demographic to any of the other scenarios you're talking about. That is what's caused so much international opprobrium against Israel, is the fact that so many children, pro rata in the civilian death count, have been killed. It's that people are so exercised about, and rightly. The problem with going after Hamas in the way that Israel has been doing is that the collateral damage, as they would put it, to so many thousands of children has now tested the patience of the world to a degree that vast quantities of the world are against it and want this to stop.
Candace Owens never spoke out once against Bashar al-Assad, who killed 600,000 Arabs. Hamas want Palestinian children to die because the more they die, the more you will condemn me and Israel. Winston Churchill was told by the Americans, don't bomb German cities, Hamburg, Dresden, etc. at night. You can't see what you're bombing. Do what we Americans have, which is precision daytime bombing. And Churchill said no.
All right.
And he flattened German cities. And he is considered today the greatest British statesman of the 20th century.
By the way, the flattening of cities like Dresden was widely condemned at the time, including by many people in Britain, and led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention.
Dresden was the last month of the war, but before that, Hamburg and everything else was not condemned.
It led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention after World War II, specifically to stop that kind of thing happening again. So I'm glad you raised that example.
Do you condemn Winston Churchill as a war criminal for Dresden?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? He bombed Dresden and killed 25,000 people.
Yeah, he also saved the world from Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
Oh, he saved the world. So Israel's saving the Middle East from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Iran.
But it's not, though.
Hezbollah.
Israel's not doing that.
Thank you.
I was going to say exactly what you said, Piers. Like, Dresden was considered a Holocaust. It was, in fact, a war crime. And the fact that you are having to reference a war crime to justify what's happening in Gaza is not a point for you. It's completely awful. When people say, oh, well, look at what we did. Look at all these other horrific things we did. Why do you care about this horrible thing that's happening? I don't even understand that logic. It's completely ridiculous. Look, there is no person in good conscience who should be comfortable with the amount of death that's happening in Gaza. And yes, if you are going to correlate it to Dresden, that would be a fair comparison, except much more has been dropped on Gaza than was dropped in Dresden. So is it fair to call what's happening in Gaza a Holocaust? Is that what we're looking after when you have this nonstop onslaught? And it's completely ridiculous to say, oh, well, this is happening because of Hamas. Let's be very clear. It is happening because the Israeli government will not stop
deaths. In Gaza particularly, the devastating number of children killed underscores the profound moral complexity of modern warfare. At its core lies a fundamental question: how can a state defend itself without crossing the line into an unacceptable human cost? The disproportionate civilian toll, especially among children, forces a re-examination of principles like proportionality and the obligation to protect In Gaza's densely populated landscape, the sheer scale of destruction has sparked global outrage and intensified scrutiny of Israel's military methods. Ultimately, the controversy calls into question whether strategies that inflict such heavy civilian losses can ever be justified. It challenges the ethical foundation of modern military doctrine and urges a shift toward approaches that place humanitarian concerns at the center of conflict resolution.
Sons fighting in this war. Candace just said that Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than on Dresden. What's your source for that? You just made a blood libel against the Jewish state.
We can't keep doing this.
Lancaster bombers over 2 nights. I am asking you, what is your source?
This is getting very
boring. The answer. Okay, don't interrupt me, please. The answer is the
person who is blood libeling
Pierce. My turn. Pierce.
Rabbi Shmuley, you can't ask someone a question and then refuse to let them answer.
So I asked for a source. I didn't ask for a question.
We've heard the question. I'm going to respond to what you are saying. This tactic of when anybody brings up anything that Israel is doing is wrong, you get to just scream blood libel and anti-Semitism.
Don't interrupt.
Oh my gosh, it's a blood libel. It is not a blood libel to talk about the amount of death and the tons of explosives that have been dropped on the civilians in Palestine, okay? That is not a blood libel against Jewish people. This is such a nasty and perverted tactic,
what is your
which
source?
essentially says, I don't have to debate anymore because I get to just call everybody a person person who's accusing me of blood libels. Okay, truly, what is happening right now is that the blood of Palestinians is being shed. Okay, that is not a libel against the Jews. That is a fact and a reality against Bibi Netanyahu and this government, which has gone extreme in their response to October 7th. So stop this tactic.
Understood. Piers, can I now have my turn again? All I asked was the source. Clearly, she has none. It was invented out of whole cloth. That's what a blood libel is.
You wanted the source from Candace.
I never got.
I never
got between.
Rabbi Shmuley, you wanted the source from Candace. I think she has one. Well, why don't you let her answer? I think she has one.
Let me fact check this source as well. So 70,000
Yes, I want to see where Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than Dresden.
70,000 tons of explosive have been dropped on the Gaza Strip. Let's see how many tons of explosives were dropped on Dresden.
I don't have a computer on me. This is ridiculous.
Let her finish.
This is a cheat sheet. This is absurd.
So 2,700 tons of bombs were dropped on Dresden in an 800 bomber air raid. And that is according to Britannica, the encyclopedia.
And what was the tonnage of bombs dropped in Gaza?
In Gaza, it was 70,000 tons of explosives were dropped in the Gaza Strip. And I got that from CNN.
I'm glad that she has her cheat sheet, her computer in front of her. But notice, she made this
you called it a blood libel.
Not knowing what she was talking about.
What she said, hang on. What she said, to be clear, was the Israeli...
It's also in the New York Times.
The Israeli Defense Force had dropped more bombs on Gaza than were dropped on Dresden. That is true. Do you accept that, Rabbi Shmuley?
You know, Piers, I find this an astonishing debate.
You asked?
Wait, first of all, I don't... Wait. What do you mean it's true? Because she said it's true?
No, do you accept that's true?
Fact checkers?
The New York Times says it's true.
Is this a serious show? Wait. Every time I try to speak,
you asked for a source. You called it a blood libel. Fortunately, we had time to look it up.
She made a definitive statement. She admitted she had no source. She had to then use her computer. It's absurd that she has a computer during this debate.
But she was right.
Because she had to look it up. 1 second.
But she was right.
I just want to make sure people are recognizing, because he said a lot of stuff there. He's not able to counter. He essentially tried to hold me to looking up the sources. We've now found the sources, and it's the BBC, it's the New York Times, and it is the Euromed Human Rights Monitor.
We have found no sources, and we'll fact check it afterward. You looked it up during the show. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Bombardment of Gaza took. The Allied bombing of Dresden in World War II delivers a pointed challenge to Rabbi Shmuley's defense of Israeli military actions by invoking Dresden, a historical atrocity broadly condemned on's highlights the moral danger of justifying present-day violence through past wartime precedents. Her critique dismantles the logic that previous atrocities can legitimize current actions, especially when the human cost today is staggering. The deaths of large numbers of civilians, particularly children, raise urgent questions about proportionality, humanity, and the ethical limits of military tactics. Owens reframes the debate from one of military necessity to one of human rights, stressing that civilian deaths cannot be excused by historical parallels. Instead, they demand accountability and moral clarity. The exchange ultimately exposes how appeals to history can be used to obscure the ethical responsibility of minimizing harm to innocent lives.
Few days, never condemned it.
The collective punishment that is being assigned to the Gazans, the Palestinians living in Gaza, is also unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it, and it should be made to stop. And I do believe that a radical fringe has taken hold of Israel. And further evidence of that, by the way, is that we are not even allowed to critique Israel. Now what's happening across America is that you have Zionist organizations that are threatening and bullying people because people are taking a stance against this act against humanity. What they're doing is inhumane in Palestine. And so what they're doing is they're saying this person should get fired, this person should lose their job. The Zionist Federation of Australia just asked for me to have my visa banned simply because I don't support what Israel is doing. And if that is what I have to pay, if ultimately what happens is I get my visa banned because Zionism has a lot of money in media, then so be it. It's less of a price than the children in Gaza are paying right now. And as a Christian, I will never support what Bibi Netanyahu is doing. You are watching Rabbi Shmuley do this live, right? When we talk about yellow journalism and people that take things out of context and try to present it to people with a bunch of hysteria and go, oh my gosh, Candace said this. Oh my gosh, Candace is a Holocaust denier. Oh my gosh, he's called me all of these names and he doesn't have a single fact in there. They just know that if they say those things, it's a trigger. Ultimately, I believe it's going to to yield more anti-Semitism. It's going to make people associate what Bibi Netanyahu is doing to all Jews around the world. And so I think it's important for them to realize it's these same exact tactics of manipulation, the same exact name calling and ad hominem attacks that is not based in fact and not based in reality, but based in not wanting to answer the fair critiques that people have about what Israel is doing.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, I mean, there's some validity to that argument, I think, is that too often I do see people immediately branded anti-Semitic if they dare to criticize the Israeli government. But there's a very big difference between criticizing a government and its actions and a whole people, which is what anti-Semitism is.
I am a very close friend of Netanyahu, and I criticize him allowing Qatar. Qatar is one of the most duplicitous, evil governments in the world. So I criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, my dear friend, for allowing money to go into Hamas in the belief that they could be bought off.
A huge issue that you have right now is this dishonesty. If you really want to understand why Israel is facing a PR crisis, why Zionism right now to people doesn't feel good and they don't want to associate themselves with it, is because it seems like it takes so many lies to make.
Rabbi Shmuley's attempt to brand Candace Owens as anti-Semitic highlights a familiar rhetorical tactic, conflating criticism of a government's policies with bigotry against its people or religion. Owens pushes back firmly, clarifying that her critique is directed at the Israeli government's actions, not at Jewish people or Judaism as a whole. This distinction is critical. It separates legitimate political criticism from prejudicial attacks based on faith or ethnicity. Piers Morgan's role as moderator reinforces the importance of maintaining that separation, stressing that criticizing a nation's policies, whether Israel's or any other country's, does not equate to attacking its people or their identity. By underscoring this nuance, the debate preserves space for rigorous political discourse while guarding against unfair accusations of racism or anti-Semitism. It ensures the focus remains where it belongs, on policy and accountability, rather than personal or religious identity.
All of the Abrahamic religions have been infiltrated by Satanists, and that is what I've said. So they've decided to pull apart only the piece where I'm talking about Judaism and not where I'm speaking about all of the faiths having been infiltrated, and speaking about how it's important for everyone to recognize this so that you can realize that there is this sort of satanic cult that's operating within all of the faiths. And I think that they use Christians and they use Jews and Muslims as well. I've said that on my show multiple times. I'm hopeful that this is something that the rabbi will agree with, is that it is a fact that Jewish pedophiles, American Jewish pedophiles, escape and run and hide in Israel, where they are given safe harbor by the government. That is a fact. They will not extradite our pedophiles. That is an absolute nonsense, given the many billions of dollars that we give to Israel, that we can't get back the men that are raping children, okay? And I can't imagine a single person that would think otherwise. And to be clear, it wasn't Candace Owens who researched and came up with this. It was an incredible Jewish organization that looked into this, talked about how wrong it was, and brought it into the mainstream media. If you don't like that Israel is harboring pedophiles, that's not on me. That is on the state of Israel.
That is an absolute lie and fabrication against Israel.
First and foremost, I just want to debunk your claim that what I said was a lie. It is in CBS News, and it was the Jewish Community Watch, an American organization that tracks accused pedophiles who has been trying for years to find a specific pedophile. They are the ones that brought this to the forefront, and CBS News partnered with them.
What's the name of the pedophile?
Well, they were tracking down
a pedophile. You don't know, do you?
Now
let's go to the Vatican. How many people they allowed? How many cardinal archbishops were protected?
Please don't cut me off. Please don't cut me off.
Okay.
You told a lie, and so I'm debunking it live for you. The pedophile.
What's the name of the pedophile they're looking for? What's the name?
I'm trying to say it for the third time. His name is Jimmy Julius Carew.
You're looking it up right now? You mean you said all this and you had no idea?
The title of the article in CBS News is entitled, How Jewish American Pedophiles Hide from Justice in Israel. CBS News teamed up with a Jewish organization and came to this conclusion because they were the ones that brought it to the forefront. So courageous Jewish people who are
Do we really need someone to read off the internet in a debate? This is not your show. This is a debate.
I don't think it's normal to lie like that and feel nothing. I hope he forever has a platform, because I think that it showcases to the world what it is that I'm speaking about when we speak about
Candace Owens' condemnation of extremism across all religions, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Her broader point, radicalism is not confined to a single faith, but exists across religious traditions. By stressing this reality, she calls for a balanced and honest conversation that confronts extremism without bias or favoritism. Owens emphasizes that true moral integrity requires holding one's own community accountable, just as much as calling out others. Her stance pushes back against selective criticism and double standards, insisting on a universal approach to denouncing radicalism wherever it appears. Ultimately, her argument advocates for a more comprehensive and truthful discourse that transcends religious boundaries and prioritizes accountability over identity. What do you think? Should extremism be confronted equally across all faiths? Share your thoughts in the comments below.